We have Kay, him in an undisclosed location, wants to ask us a question about faith. Welcome, Kay.
How are we doing today? I just wanted to ask, why do you define faith for theists the way you don't do for God? Don't you think it's a little bit strawman? Just wait for them to tell you what they think faith is.
No. So first of all, I'm telling them what I think faith is, and they're free to tell me what they think faith is. The problem is that faith, as it's been defined by most people, when we get into those conversations, they want to claim that their belief is based on faith and that this is reasonable. And their definition of faith is not one that is actually reasonable by and large, which is why I point out that my definition of faith is the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason. If they disagree, well, they're free to. And Hebrews 11:1 has a definition of faith that demonstrates, at least within Christianity, a problem with faith. But I'm happy for somebody to tell me what their definition of faith is. What definition of faith do you think we should go with?
I don't think you should go with any type of definition. I think you should just let them say what they think. Here's the thing. Most Christians don't actually read the Bible. And so if you just ask them, they're most likely going to say it's something akin to confidence, right? So I have a way of debunking that whole thing, with that definition. So imagine there's a circle, right? We're going to call this circle things we know. Outside of that circle is things we know we don't know. And outside of that circle is an even bigger circle. We don't know how big it is. We just know that it extends to the horizon, right? And that we're going to call things we don't know. And if you were to imagine that your belief in God is like a grain of sand in the middle of a desert that you don't know how big it is, your best bet is to get that sand to put it in the smallest circle for you to find it easier, right? So
first of all,
yep.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you were to count how many assertions the Bible makes and turn them into yes/no propositions, and turn those propositions into a coin flip, how many coin flips? What are the chances that every time you flip the coin, you're going to get heads, right? So it's going to be like 1 in infinity. So those are your chances of you being right about your God, right? And for every and without evidence, you have as much chances of being right as a guy who believes that whose God. I'm sorry. Sometimes my Spanish pops up. You have as much chances of a God of somebody whose God, whose way to get to heaven is by being a homosexual, right? So imagine somebody believes that there's a God.
Hang on. Whoa, stop.
Kind of talking all over the map here. Let's.
So first of all, I don't think that you've come up with a better way to address this. You've described circles, and you have a circle of what we know, and then outside of that is a circle of what we know we don't know, and that one is bigger. And then you say there's a circle outside of that is what we don't know, and that it's bigger. Well, if we don't know what we don't know, then you can't say it's a bigger circle. So there's already a fundamental problem with your unknown unknowns. But when you continue on to talk about what your odds are of being correct about your God, what the fuck does that have to do with somebody who thinks getting to God has something to do with homosexuality? That was a word that I wasn't
saying that
if you hang on, that was a word that if you would have asked me to bet a paycheck on whether or not it was going to come up in that sentence, in that context, I would have bet an entire paycheck that it wouldn't. What the hell does that have to do with anything?
Okay. If you don't have any evidence, your chances of being right is just as much as somebody who believes in God, right? But instead, his only way to get to heaven is by being a homosexual, right? So you can't.
No, Kay.
No,
I'm telling you, what you just said makes no sense at all. I need clarification because first of all, what you said is if you don't have any evidence, you have just as much chance of being right. No, you don't. If you don't have any way to calculate or even guess at what somebody's chances of being right. But what the hell does that have to do with being a homosexual?
All right. There are two Christians, right? Somebody believes that Christian number one believes that God does not advocate for slavery, and the other one does. Without evidence, you have as much chance of being right as the next guy, which is zilch. That's all I'm saying, right?
Okay. No, that's not true. No, sir. That's not true. Your chances of being right have nothing to do. Okay. Wow. So let's imagine that there's a God that is okay with slavery, and two Christians disagree about it, their chances of being right are not the same. One of them is 100% right, and the other one is 0% right.
The evidence has nothing to do with it, right?
And what they know about that has nothing to do with what their chances are of being right. You're talking about their chances of being able to demonstrate they're right. But if we're looking at Christianity, and both of them are pointing at the Bible advocates for slavery and doesn't ever condemn it, which means that at least the Christian who's pointing at the Bible as the foundation of their beliefs is more consistent and on more consistent footing than the person who points at the Bible. And this is why when you have the gay-friendly and dismisses it, this is why when you have the gay-friendly churches within Christianity, they're like, oh, God, hey, you can be gay and you can come to our church. Well, the Bible is very clearly anti-homosexual, except for lesbians in some cases. So when we're talking about who's more likely to be right, what does this have to do with faith? Because you called in to suggest that I should let them define faith. I'm happy to let people define faith. I said that at the start. But I have a definition as well, and I think mine's more accurate, and I'm going to keep pointing to it because every time we have these conversations, they get to the same point. So what is the point we're trying to get at here, Kay?
Well, I just want you to let them know and just give them enough help to hang themselves. That's all. Because I think it makes you sound clever. I think you're right, but I don't think the theist learns anything. That's all.
Okay. How many theists have you asked if they learned anything from that?
Well, not the theists that call your show, but just with experience.
I rest my case.
Kay, the thing is, I think we're pretty good on the show about letting the caller define their own terms. For instance, the callers are completely free to define what they mean by faith. But if there's a Christian or evangelical Christian on the call, and they want to try to define faith differently than what the Bible clearly states, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That is clearly what faith in Christian terms means. And to allow a Christian to come on and say, well, I believe it's something different, all we're doing is pointing out that they're being inconsistent with what their own Bible says about the point they're making. That's all we're doing there.
Isn't that a way to just say that there's no true Scotsman?
No, because they're the ones making the definitions. We're not saying they're not really a Christian. We're pointing out that you're not being consistent with what your own faith identifies.
Every single conversation about this is going to be slightly different, and they're going to have different usages and stuff of faith. I appreciate the fact, Kay, that you think you found a better way. Now go out and prove it, because you can either start a show of your own, or you can find out, you can poll people, you can do whatever. But just to call in and say you think you have a better way of doing this, when cool, like that's your opinion, bro. But
no, I don't
didn't make a case for it.
Just showing you my way and asking you if you thought it was.
But your way, when I let you loose with it, not only didn't make anything clearer about faith,
very confusing.
You were making assertions about who's more likely to be correct when you can't demonstrate that and you don't know it. You were making assertions about how big the quantity of things of unknown unknowns that there are when you can't demonstrate it, and you threw in homosexuality out as a curveball. So I'm not convinced right now that your way is any better. Maybe it is.
Well, I just threw in homosexuality because you have as much chances of being. I know you already explained it, but I'm saying that you have as much chances of demonstrating that you're right. If there was a God that was for homosexuality, that's all.
No, you don't.
Right?
No, you don't. You can't even see why you're wrong. Like, I'm not convinced that your method's necessarily better, but in this one, you're just wrong.
Well, I'm gonna listen back to the call and just try to chew on it a little bit. Well, thank you for the call, and
thanks, Kay.
I just wanted to ask you two more things. Is that okay?
One more. I'll give you one more.
All right. It was regarding the trolley problem. How many people's lives have to be at stake for me to be justified in killing you to save them?
I don't know. That's your decision to make. I don't know. That's your decision to make. You decide what your view is. But go ahead, Dave.
Right. Thank you.
I agree with that. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I mean, it's everyone has to decide what's their point on that. What's their line?
Yeah. I don't even know what mine is. Like, if it was one person versus everybody, is that enough? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the trolley problem isn't so much about getting to an actual quantity or right answer as it is in getting people to think and explore the situations where they think there's a quick and easy answer to realize that there's not.
No, it's not black and white.
Anyway, thanks, Kay.
Well, that was confusing.
Was a little bit. I'm happy. Maybe we'll get a theist to call in to talk about their what they define as faith, and then we can get at it.
I mean, I don't think we're wrong to. What do you think? I mean, if a Christian is trying to identify faith as something different from what the Bible says, because you and I know the problem is you and I know the Bible better than most of the Christians that call in, and so we're pointing them back to their own source material for definitions. And when there's an inconsistency there, I think it's appropriate to point that out.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Maybe, granted, I've done this for 16 plus years now, and so some of this is so old hat to me that maybe it doesn't get explained well to other people. So let me try this. In conversations where theists come in and they say, well, it's just a matter of faith, they're quite frequently just saying, I don't have any evidence. I don't have no way to demonstrate any evidence. It's just something that I take on faith. And so now we're back to the blind faith thing that we had before, where we were asked about blind faith and experts. I don't want blind faith. I have no use for blind faith. But if they're saying, this is just a matter of faith, then they're tacitly admitting they don't have evidence. And the reason my definition of faith is what it is because if you say, Matt, why do you believe that the earth is round? Well, I can point to evidence. I can point to the shadow of the earth on the moon. I can point to the study done with Eratosthenes with the wells and the shadows and all that stuff. I can point to GPS systems and satellites and how flight times from the tip of South America to the tip of South Africa are only consistent, in this straight line with this much time, whereas in a flat earth, it doesn't make any sense. I can go through all those things. At no point would I say it's a matter of faith. This is true for anything substantive that I believe in, including things where people want to say, oh, Matt's bought into a religion of gendered souls. No, I'm talking about psychology and people's identity, and it's necessarily a personal identity. You get to decide what your identity is, or you may not get to decide because nobody gets to decide, but just because something exists in your head doesn't mean that it's any less substantive as a position than others. But that's different from whether or not there's a God and somebody saying, oh, why do you believe in God? Well, it's a faith-based position. And then when you object to it, you say faith is not a path to truth. Faith, as they use the term, is not going to get you to truth. It doesn't have any reliable method of showing this truth. Is there any position you couldn't take on faith and just claim, oh, well, hey, white people are better than brown people. I just take that on faith. Well, you're still a fucking racist. This is the thing. And so I use that definition of faith as the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason. Because if you believe something and you have a good reason and you're asked why,
you don't need faith.
You give the reason. The only time we ever hear appeals to faith is when somebody either does not know of any good reason or does not want to express the reason that they think is a good reason. Because perhaps they know it's not as good as they thought it was.
Perhaps.
I don't know.